So for Georgia has always desired protection in her life. It's the one thing she's never really been afforded ever since she was a child. I don't think she's ever felt like people were looking out for her, protecting her. She sort of fell through the cracks of society, of the system, and she's paid the price for all of that.
It takes Jenny and Georgia a quick minute before they can make up and kind of even really talk to each other. And I was a little surprised by that. Was there any part of you that was like worried that we weren't going to get back to the fun mother-daughter stuff?
No, I mean, with Georgia, this is a woman with a plan, and where there's a will, there's a way. So no, once Georgia sets her mind to something, it might take a minute, but there was nothing Georgia was more determined to do than get back on track with Ginny.
When they do finally kind of confront each other in the car and have that like emotional breakthrough about Kenny, and then later on also some of the heavy stuff with self-harm, there's a lot of emotional scenes between you and Tony. What is it like for you guys to kind of go there? Was it easier for season 2 since you've known each other now?
Totally. I think we already have this history between not only our characters, but ourselves as friends and as actors. And luckily with Tony, I just feel like we have such a safe space with each other that we're really able to kind of jump right into the deep end with some of these incredibly difficult scenes and have these really nuanced conversations surrounding really, really difficult subjects. So I'm super grateful to her for that. She's also just a wonderful scene partner who's always present and there for me. So the second we both get there, we're kind of locked and loaded, and it's a safe space to play and take risks. And I know that we have each other's backs, so that always helps.
We have a lot more Zion this season, and it was kind of interesting to see the two different parenting approaches and, Ginny kind of playing both sides a little bit there. I thought it was so interesting that, she begs him not to tell Georgia about what she's going through. And then when Georgia finds out, her instinct is to call Zion. So tell me a little bit about their different parenting techniques and kind of getting to explore that dynamic.
I love the dynamic between Zion and Ginny. It's so fun watching their scenes throughout the season. Look, he did what he thought was the right thing in that moment. He has his own relationship with Ginny aside from Georgia, as he should. He's her father. And he really didn't want to break that trust. And maybe if Zion and Georgia were still together, he would have shared that with Georgia. But I kind of respect that he didn't tell her, especially because Georgia, as we know, tends to meddle. That I think they both feared what Georgia would do if this was put in her own hands.
Therapy then does get to be explored, which is kind of cool. And we kind of see Georgia come around to it. Did you like that? I thought that made a lot of sense, that we might need a third party here.
I loved it so much. I also love seeing and playing Georgia when she's super out of her element and sitting in this environment where she's talking about mental health, especially with a professional. These are luxuries Georgia's never been afforded because she's so stuck living in survival mode that she truly has to live minute to minute, and the stakes are so high and everything is life or death for Georgia, and she's tangled this web of deception that she has to maintain. So she's never had the opportunity to go to therapy, to sit and self-reflect, to be introspective. And she obviously has so many social and cultural blinders that there's nothing Georgia could use more than some healthy tools, as opposed to a lot of these unhealthy tools that she falls back on. But these are the only tools that she has. So it was definitely, it's an eye-opening, huge breakthrough moment for Georgia to begin to see Ginny as someone other than a mini-me version of Georgia, and to see Ginny as this adult who's growing up and has her own thoughts and opinions that are incredibly valid, and Georgia has to try really hard to stop and listen and understand.
100%. We have a scene where we finally see Zion, Joe, and Paul all together, which I was just like so excited about as a fan. But we also finally see Joe and Georgia acknowledge that they know each other, and the sunglasses. What did you think of them finally kind of acknowledging each other? It's like a quick moment, but like we finally got there.
I loved it. I think we needed it. There's been all this tension building up for almost 2 seasons at this point, because it happens near the end of the season. And I think it feels really earned and there's such a nice payoff, but it's also heartbreaking because Georgia is a woman with a plan and she's stuck in this survivor mode and she just needs to take care of her family. The thought of entertaining anything with Joe would almost feel selfish in a way because right now all she can think about is her children and she needs to protect them and move forward with this plan with Paul.
100%. And we see a lot more Paul, which was great. Obviously, the dynamic between you guys is super fun. Were you surprised that he still wanted to marry her? Because I was.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I know Paul is so incredibly charming and I love his relationship with the kids. And he's so earnest and thoughtful. He's an incredible man for Georgia to have in her life. I feel like she's so lucky to have someone as stable and thoughtful and considerate as he is and patient.
Yes. And with the kids too, seems to have a good dynamic. That was fun to see them kind of get along in like a genuine way as well.
So cute. I love it. And I think that's something that a lot of people at home, I have a very modern family that people can relate to. Blending families is hard and it doesn't always go as smoothly and there's still plenty of bumps, but that's the reality.
I want to circle back to the wedding in a second, but first I want to go to a little bit of Gil because, oh my God, a lot happened there with that character. Something that really stuck out to me though was kind of watching Georgia talk to Austin about it after he, shot the gun, and she still was saying, he doesn't love me, but he loves you, and her kind of trying so hard to still put her kids first. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think it's really, really important to Georgia that Austin feels he can respect and love his dad. I think Georgia knows from, unfortunately, not having that relationship with either her mother or her father or any parental figure in her life, how traumatizing it can be when you don't have that love and support, or when your idea of them is so tarnished, or when you see them for who they really are. And these are a lot of traumas Georgia's had to deal with. And Georgia's main MO in life is to make sure that her kids have a better upbringing in life than she ever had. So if part of that is pretending that their dad is maybe someone that he isn't, although of course Gil does love Austin, but he has plenty of his own imperfections and faults that are very scary. But it's incredibly important to Georgia, and I'm grateful that she was able to put herself aside and realize that that's what's most important for Austin in that moment.
An unlikely alliance or friendship with Cynthia develops that then goes to a whole another level of Georgia, obviously, making that move for her and killing her husband. Why do you think she did that?
So for Georgia has always desired protection in her life. It's the one thing she's never really been afforded ever since she was a child. I don't think she's ever felt like people were looking out for her, protecting her. She sort of fell through the cracks of society, of the system, and she's paid the price for all of that. And knowing that Cynthia rescinded Gil's application to live in Wellsbury, to her was the most beautiful act of kindness and protection that Georgia's probably ever felt. So in Georgia's mind, she wanted to rescind this painstakingly long grief and trauma that Cynthia and her son are feeling, which sort of circles back to Georgia worried about Austin's idea of Gil, and now Zach seeing his father in this really heartbreaking light, that she wants to return the favor.
At the wedding, one, tell me about that dress, because oh my God. And two, were you surprised that that's the crime that finally gets Georgia behind bars? Because there's a lot to choose from at this point.
Could you believe it? She's coming from a good place. She's trying to put this man out of his misery, and she's trying to help this woman move on and not feel guilty about it and try to keep this pristine image of Zach's father for Zach. But yes, that's exactly what ruins the House of Cards. The dress, I had more fittings for that dress than I've had for anything in my entire life. I remember the day Sarah Lampert, our creator, texted me saying, I think I want Georgia to have a blue dress. And I thought it was the most perfect, genius idea. I had just gotten married So I had all these wedding dresses on my mind, and not a single one I thought could work for Georgia because they were too simple, too understated. There was no dress I ever came across that I thought would do Georgia's wedding justice. So once she said she knew she wanted a blue one, I knew we were on the right track. And then they found this epic, I don't know, 10, 15 foot train ball gown that was so big, Ginny didn't even fit in the aisle.
It was perfect. Well, my last question, do you have a favorite pop culture reference of the season? You got a good Sunnydale in there, you're Mary-Kate and Ashley. Those stuck out to me, but you have a favorite?
Yeah, what? I love the one, what's a good one from this season? Oh, I like when she pulls out the Buffy the Vampire reference when Ginny, and the Cher reference when she was like, you're just gonna show up and be mysterious with an air of whatever. Those were great when Ginny's going through her wardrobe transformation.
For more news, content, and exclusive interviews, make sure to hit the sub, like, and bell button down below and visit usmagazine.com.